This is Soundstage founder Doug Schneider. You're listening to the Soundstage Audiophile Podcast, your semi-regular deep dive into news, facts, opinions, and anecdotes about everything that really matters in the world of high-performance audio. Hosts Brent Butterworth and Dennis Berger have more than 5 decades worth of audio product testing experience, and a few hours of podcasting experience as well. Now, here's Brent and Dennis.
Hello, I'm Brent Butterworth, editor of Soundstage Solo.
And I'm Dennis Berger, editor of Soundstage Access.
And we are here to bring you the Soundstage Audiophile Podcast, episode like a zillion
20.
or something.
It's
20.
20.
Okay, 20.
This is our
20
20th
equals,
episode, man.
There's no definition for a zillion, so we're both right. Anyway, we are here to, as part of the Soundstage Network, which is a network of, I think, 9 megasites. Is that right?
Microsites, I believe they call them.
That right. Well, we think they're kind of mega micro because they're all big and awesome and have tons of content, but it's a whole bunch of those all together. So it's a
Doesn't
mega.
that cancel out? Doesn't mega and micro, wouldn't that just make it a site?
Okay, yeah, they're just sites. Whatever. They're just good sites about audio, but you can go and read about everything from like really cheap little Bluetooth speakers all the way up to $500,000 speaker systems and stuff like that, and catch up on all the latest news and audio, some of which we'll be discussing today.
What are we going to start with this week, man?
Well, we're going to start with a review, and not really a discussion of the review, more a discussion of the claims the manufacturer makes that the review turned us on to. Then we went to their website. Then we went to their AES paper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's a review of the Lavardin. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. ITx20 integrated amp by Alan Sercom at Hi-Fi Plus. And they are making a lot of claims in here that initially kind of raised my eyebrows a little bit. As a measurement guy, as a guy who's done a lot of audio measurements in his life, I was looking at the statements in here going like, this doesn't make sense to me. I need to investigate further. And we did investigate further, and the results may surprise you.
They might not.
Well, they might not. Or do we have anything after that? We have a second segment coming up, right?
We do. So Spotify has been claiming since sometime around the Carter administration, I believe, that they had a lossless plan coming, a Spotify Hi-Fi. Well, apparently they are getting closer to that, and some details have leaked out about perhaps the features of this new tier, as well as the pricing of this new tier. And I think you and I, my friend, will have some opinions about some of this news if it turns out to be true, and if it is as imminent as it seems to be. So, with
Spotify, who knows?
Yeah. No. So, what are we going to wrap up with this week?
We are going to wrap up with a discussion of Soundstage Global's coverage of the recent Warsaw Hi-Fi show. I think they call it the audio video show Warsaw. You wouldn't think Warsaw would be like on the radar. Warsaw's in Poland, by the way, for anybody who doesn't know. But you wouldn't think Warsaw would be like on the radar of the audio industry. But this is, I think, the second biggest show in Europe now. And I have been, and it's awesome. And they have Doug Schneider, our founder, and Jason Thorpe, one of our writers, went and dug through all the different offerings, a lot of which are really different from what you will see in the U.S. Yeah. So we're going to dig into a couple things that we saw in their coverage.
Yeah, but first...
Okay, so let's go ahead and dig into this review a little bit. Again, this is the Lavardin, Lavardin, ITx20 integrated amp. The review's by Alan Sercom of Hi-Fi Plus. And I've met Alan a couple times. He's a great guy, and I like reading his reviews. They're really well-written and kind of fun to read. So we're not criticizing him at all. But there's a lot of claims made in the context of this review and then on the manufacturer's website that kind of, I think, highlight a lot of the problems in the audio industry right now, certainly the high-end audio industry, because some of these claims are just wackadoodle. And that's my personal, judgment.
That's a kind way of putting it.
Some of them may have been kind of valid about 25 years ago.
Well, and the thing is, like, if this isn't wackadoodle, then they are describing it badly because it sounds wackadoodle, you know?
Right.
That's the problem.
So, Dennis, all right, we're going to, normally, like, one of us kind of leads the discussion on a segment and the other kind of asks questions. But in this case, I think since we're both so kind of, shall we say, energized about this, we are going to go, this is going to be like a team up of Godzilla and Mecha Godzilla, who were, of course, enemies in the movie. But, you know, they team up together to stomp upon the little Japanese town of like 4-foot high cardboard models, which are frankly, in some cases, sturdier than the arguments presented for this technology. Whatever.
Well, all right. Well, with a purposeful grimace and a terrible sound, let's describe what this thing claims to be.
Why don't you go ahead? Jump in.
So the review says that Lavardin suggests that it has found a form of solid-state distortion it calls memory distortion. It goes on to explain most measurement of audio amplifiers is performed either using an impulse or a steady-state waveform like a sine wave. But, argues Lavardin, this completely ignores real-world conditions where music happens. So it goes on to explain this memory distortion and this memory-free technology that the manufacturer has developed. Doesn't really explain a lot of what it does or how it works. There is one point in the review where he even says, you know, naturally, these are both proprietary technologies, and the controversial nature of those memory effects claims makes memory-free technology unique to Lavardin, despite its suggestion that this is the biggest revelation in audio amplifier technology in decades. However, Lavardin is also remarkably secretive about its circuit design. So anyway, yeah, basically what he's saying is, there's something magic going on here. There's magic black box stuff, and it fixes time thingy wingies. And I don't know, it sounds better, you know.
Okay, but we've already missed a big red flag here because the sentence that you did not read is after the part that talking about it ignores real world conditions where music happens. Dot. By not factoring in the time element in measurement and subsequently amplifier design. Okay, red flag right there because it says right there, measurement is performed using either an impulse or a steady-state waveform like a sine wave. What is an impulse measurement? It's a time measurement.
Time measurement.
You have some kind of a thing. Either it's going to be a log chirp tone, which is like whoop, or it's going to be an MLS pulse, which is noise. Yeah. And that measures time. And if you look at the readout of that, you see the time result of you see an impulse. It's like a pulse that goes up, and you can see how it responds over time, and it's measured in milliseconds. Yeah. It is a time measurement, and something this is why I think every reviewer needs to know a little bit about measurement. Otherwise, you are helpless in the hands of these manufacturers who are trying to sell their stuff. And since they assume you don't know anything about measurement, they will tell you stuff that's either flat out wrong, or in this case, about 25 years out of date, and try to persuade you when you should know better. You don't have to spend years doing measurements, but you need to, go read like John Atkinson stuff in Stereophile and go back, read a couple years worth of that, and you'll understand audio measurements pretty well at that point, and you won't be fooled by things like this. Okay, you don't have to physically do the measurements, but you got to be cognizant of what's going on here. So there's a thing called an FFT, fast Fourier transform, and Fourier was a scientist. When did he live? Like in the 1800s?
Oh, it had to have been like the 1980s or something. Yeah, no, it's real.
We're notorious for getting that dates wrong.
Cutting edge stuff. Like this guy. Wait, no, he's not.
No, this dude was like somebody who had some beakers or something and was like pouring. Yeah. That's how he did his audio experiments with like beakers and boilers and stuff.
I don't even know if they'd invented beakers
and like
yet.
Tesla coils and stuff like that.
Wait, we should probably look it up. When was Fourier?
Look it up.
Joseph Fourier. Born 21st March, 1768.
Okay, so this is relative news to the audio industry.
This is pretty new stuff. Yeah, these are recent developments. Yeah.
All the measurement gear. Well, first of all, here's a concept for you. A fast Fourier time, or a fast Fourier transform, you can convert time into frequency, or you can do a reverse FFT and convert frequency into time. And measurement systems going back at least 30 years have been able to do this. You had the old LMS system, which was a frequency-based measurement. It would go boop, and then measure the level of that. And then it go boop, and measure the level of that frequency. And then, but it could convert that into a time measurement, okay? And the Clio analyzer I use, which is mostly FFT-based, although it also does sine wave, it sends out one of those tones like I did, like a boop or a psht, and there's a little button on Clio, and it'll go back and forth like instantaneously between frequency and time. Boop, 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 boop. And so frequency
it allows you to, one of the things that's really cool about it is it allows you, when you're basically just looking at a waveform, right? When you are looking at an audio waveform, you can't, well, I mean, maybe if you spend a lot of time with it, you could start to see, oh, those are bass frequencies, those are mid-range frequencies, what have you. But like you're looking at it, you don't really see that. And what the fast Fourier transform does is basically it transforms those in such a way where you can see, oh, there's this much 25 hertz, there's this much 47 hertz, right? So it allows you to basically take a waveform that you can just kind of tell some stuff about it and really see how the frequencies are distributed. So
yeah, but don't,
this is
I'm going to call it a trick that manufacturers pull a lot in audio is everyone understands frequency response, right? Like, oh, it's -6 at 32 hertz and it's, plus 3 at 1 kilohertz or whatever. Everyone had, I mean, I understood that stuff when I was in high school, right? It's very intuitive. Phase is extremely unintuitive. So a lot of manufacturers will say, oh, well, the frequency response is important, but the phase, we focus on the phase. And there are legitimate people who have focused on phase for I think good reasons. I mean, Jim Teal was the classic example. I mean, he was the co-founder of Teal loudspeakers. He devoted his whole life to getting his speakers to where the phase was the same at all frequencies. Okay, and I don't think he ever presented actual listening tests that showed that was better. However, I heard those speakers, and a lot of people did, and a lot of people, like Vandersteens as well, which are similar. And I think there's a reason that those speakers sound good. They have a lot of downsides. There's a lot of compromise you have to make to get the phase to be the same at all frequencies, more or less, plus minus 5%. I think so. There's legitimate use of phase, but I think usually if people start talking about time and phase in audio, that should be a giant red flag. They need to explain what they're talking about, and they need to show you controlled listening tests that prove that whatever they're doing with the phase makes a difference. Don't let it be some guy sitting there in his underwear drinking scotch, listening casually to Diana Krall on your system and going like, oh, yeah, they're right. God, this thing sounds great. It must be this phase thing they're talking about, that is the state of audio reviewing now.
One of the biggest bugbears is pre-ringing. It's when you're talking about the difference between like linear phase and minimum phase filters, a lot of people say, oh, the linear, it creates pre-ringing, and that's you can hear signal before the actual impulse. And it's like, well, not if it's like negative 90 dB down. Yeah. It's like, it's so low in this signal that you can't hear it, but it's unnatural. And for anybody who doesn't understand, and for anybody who does care, linear phase is basically a way. So anytime you do, EQ or high pass or low pass or something like that, you were introducing delay into the situation, right? And so linear phase basically evenly distributes the delay. And what happens is sometimes you've got, your impulse delayed a little bit, and you can hear things before it, whereas the minimum phase puts all of the ringing, so to speak, after the impulse. Now, but anyway, you can't hear it. We should point out, we hound manufacturers all the time saying like, well, hey, why don't you prove your claims with a controlled listening test, which almost none of them do. And however, there is an AES paper that these guys filed back in 1996
And, you know, in 1996, actually, like fast Fourier transform-based measurements were not that common. It was still, you know, basically sine sweeps on a lot of stuff. However, you know, I had one of the audio precision analyzers from that era, whatever the state-of-the-art one was at the time, and it was mostly sine-based, but it also had FFT as well, so you could measure time with it. But yeah, granted. But however, we're 25 years down the road, and these guys' website it's almost like it was written in 1996. Stuff has happened since then. Okay, you can't pretend nothing. You know, your great discovery hasn't been, you know, bypassed by 25 years worth of engineering and science. But they do have this AES paper, and I'm always hounding people like, hey, you know what? You have these claims that you're telling me are true. Why don't you do an AES paper on it and present it? And they never do. These guys did. Now, it was 20, what is that? 27 years ago? It's a long time ago. Yeah. But they actually said they have a very short 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sentence section that says correlation with listening tests. And it says several listening tests were made with the measured AC amplifiers in different conditions with different listeners. They gave the same results.
How many listeners? What results? You know, who were these listeners?
How
were
did
they
you
all
set this
80?
Up? Was it guys sitting there in their underwear drinking scotch? Or was it people in blind listening conditions where they couldn't tell what amplifier was playing? Were the levels matched? What was the system they were playing it through? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This has zero credibility. And what should be happening is when manufacturers make these kind of claims, you as, I think, audio writers and you know, all the people that write about this stuff, the hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people that write that are participating in audio forums and stuff should go look this stuff up. Now, granted, I'm an AES member, so I could download this paper, and most people aren't going to spend the 120 something a month to be an AES, or not a month. Oh my God, 120 something a year to be an AES member. But I get it. I do it just basically so I can just freely download all these papers. And but you really should be, no matter if you're a reviewer or if you're an audio forum participant, you should be questioning these claims, because the high-end audio industry makes a lot of these claims assuming you will not check them out and assuming that you will not demand evidence that their technology makes a difference.
Yeah.
Because such evidence is almost never presented.
And also assuming that you're not going to scrutinize their methodology. I mean, it's right. To the point to where when you said, oh, there's an AES paper, I was like, huh, well, dang, maybe there's something to this, you know? And then I go and look at their methodology, and it's just sort of hand wavy. Well, I don't know. Some people listened to it, and they said it was pretty good, man. And that was our listening test. It's no.
That's a good French accent there. Anyway.
Oh man. Yeah.
It's like was their marketing director from Alabama?
I'm sorry. I'll put on my best French accent.
No, don't.
I'm the locksmith of love. No, that's
right.
Pepe.
Don't make fun of the French. It's one of my favorite countries. It's the only language that I can converse in outside of English, and they have like the best food of any country. So anyway, and
also Pepe Le Pew is one of my favorite cartoon characters. So,
well, and there's a lot of and also let's say there are a lot of great audio companies out of France, and you know, Focal is the very first one most people would think of.
Also, a lot of really good bread.
Yeah, true. But anyway, this amplifier may be wonderful. It may indeed. Now, granted, they've been touting this technology for 25 plus years. And so I always think like, well, if it's so great, why isn't everybody doing it? Because any patents they would have expired. But you know, how many people couldn't have reverse engineered whatever they're doing? But the thing is, they don't present enough information for anybody to reverse engineer anything. I mean, they're saying this memory effect, which they're saying is causing these timing problems, is due to thermal variation in circuits, which of course happens. Mm-hmm. It's due to, you know, capacitors and inductors, which that's what capacitors and inductors do. Mm-hmm. They introduce timing differences, which, by the way, also frequency differences, but you're not going to make a capacitor that doesn't introduce timing differences. It's what they're supposed to do. That's why you use one.
Yeah.
And so, and it's like, yeah, so thermal fluctuations will affect what a resistor does, for example. But you know what? Why don't you document, show us an impulse response and say, hey, we heated this resistor up, we got it running really hot, and here was the impulse response, but then we cooled it down, and here was the impulse response. And how many fractions of a millisecond was the difference? It was not a lot. I mean, I could do that test. I think my measurement gear would be able to go in tiny fractions of a millisecond like that. But, it wouldn't be something that's audible. I mean, I see timing differences all the time because I publish impulse response measurements in Soundstage a lot for all the Bluetooth stuff and all that, and of course I look at the impulse response measurements every time I do a waterfall plot because that's done off of the impulse response, and I have to go in there and gate the impulse response. So I see these things constantly, and sorry, I'm just ranting too much.
I just found out there is a patent.
Really?
U.S. patent number 5635874, June 3rd, 1997.
Okay, so, well, you know what?
Maybe we should have looked at this before.
Maybe we should have. However, if it was so great, the patent's expired, is it not?
Oh,
patents from 15 years, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So, I mean, for God's sake, the patent on Dolby Digital is expired. And that's from and it expired a long time ago. That's one of the reasons they did Dolby Digital Plus. So they could extend their patent.
Patents expire in 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So if it was so great, somebody would have picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Bose's patent on, I think Bose had a patent on fourth order bandpass. Is that correct? No, sixth order bandpass, which is where you have you have a woofer and you have a vented enclosure on both ends of the woofer. And so Bose actually had a patent on it. Whether or not that patent would have actually held up in court, I don't know. I don't think anyone ever challenged it, but it came off patent. However, it wasn't appealing enough technology for anyone to actually use. I don't know if maybe somebody did, but if this was so great, then people would have been chomping at the bit to waiting for the patent to expire, as people do.
Yeah.
To go jump on it and do their own version, except this hasn't happened. And if you did guys, Lavardin, look, you can we will personally apologize if you do a blind listening test and publicly post the results and make it a controlled test, blind test, match levels, etc. Do that. And then also, send us one of your amps and we'll compare it to something and we'll do our own blind test.
Yeah.
And
which again, it's like you said before, that we are not claiming that this amp doesn't sound incredible. No. It's just what we're claiming is the marketing spin doesn't pass the sniff tests. So,
right. And audio writers should sniff a little harder.
Yeah.
Instead of holding their nose and refusing to sniff.
Or like I said before, just say, hey, this is what the manufacturer claims. And I don't really understand it enough to, validate it or invalidate it. But here's what they're claiming and here's what I heard and here's, what the measurements show. So,
yeah, I mean, I do that all the time. I say, with like a headphone review or something, they'll say, oh, this new driver does this and this and this. And I'll say, well, they make all these claims. I didn't see any of it in my measurements. I didn't necessarily hear, greater inner detail or whatever. However, here's what I thought of the sound of this headphone, independent of their claims. And it might be a good headphone. It might be bad, but I'm not going to sit there and go, oh my gosh, this has this new blah, blah technology that, the phase, the timing, because every other manufacturer ignores this, but these guys are so brilliant because they do this and blah, blah, something or another. And I just thought this headphone was fantastic. I just, it's like you should say, hey, look, man, here's their claims.
Yeah.
They make sense. They don't make sense. And, to the best of my understanding, here's what I think of their claims, but then I'm going to go listen to the product.
I mean, I think a rite of passage for any journalist is that's that day that you discover oh crap, these people are trying to sell me on their marketing spend and it might not be true, right? And I just unfortunately think a lot of people in their industry never had that revelation. It's just, I don't know why. I don't know why more people, have you not gotten burned before by a bad market? I have. I mean, it happened early in my career. I got burned. And then after that, I was automatically suspicious, perhaps more than it should be sometimes. I don't know. But yeah, you have to wonder why some of these guys have not gotten burned.
Because they haven't been mentored.
That's true.
I had a mentor. I had Lance Braithwaite at Video Magazine. And I think the very first word Lance said to me after he said, "Hi, nice to meet you," was no. Was when I was probably asking him, like, "Hey, this guy says this VCR does something like that." And Lance would be like, "No."
Oh, man.
And everybody who knows Lance will know exactly what I'm talking about.
And I received that wisdom secondhand from my sensei, you.
Yeah, well, it's like, yeah. And I had someone who was highly skeptical of everybody's claims. But I mean, he was forgiving. He was like, hey, I understand where they're coming from. I understand the limits of what they can do. And, maybe their claims are BS, but here's how this thing performs. And it's a perfectly fine product, or it's not. But yeah, he would just absolutely not go along with parroting anything.
Man, we have been rambling for a long time here.
Yeah, let's go talk about Spotify. Let's have some music and then come back and talk about Spotify.
We'll do it. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Soundstage Audiophile Podcast. I'm Dennis Berger.
And I'm Brent Butterworth.
And in this segment, we are going to be talking about a story that I ran across on Tech Radar about Spotify finally, apparently, readying their high-res audio, quote-unquote, platinum plan.
It's about time.
Yeah, so this was originally announced, Spotify Hi-Fi. I think they announced it back in early 2021, and they said it would be released by the end of 2021. And for any of our listeners who maybe don't understand the distinction here, let's talk about lossy audio and lossless audio. So do you think that's worth talking about?
Yeah, dig in.
I think everybody knows what kind of an MP3 is. It's basically they've taken a audio format like CD, right? And they've taken and applied some psychoacoustic algorithms to it to basically determine, like, what can we get rid of here that you're not going to hear or that you are less likely to hear. And then they take and run it through some other processing that quantizes it, and it kind of works in a similar way to video compression, but it makes the files much smaller. And for most of the last 20 years, most of the music that we've consumed has been this, digitally compressed, lossy audio format. So when all of the streaming services originally launched, of course, they were using lossy audio, basically because, you want to get the audio over the internet. Not everybody had high internet speeds. But in recent years, services like Tidal and Qobuz have come around introducing lossless. So you're getting full CD quality or high resolution.
And also Apple Music and Amazon both as well.
I was about to say after Qobuz and Tidal came about, they also said, okay, fine, we're doing lossless as well. And Spotify is one of the few remaining, major players in the streaming music marketplace who's still doing nothing but lossy. And they announced about a year ago, nearly 2 years ago, okay, we're doing hi-fi. It still ain't out yet, but apparently recently there was a Spotify user who was planning to ditch the service and move over to Apple Music because he wanted their spatial audio and their lossless, and Spotify sent him an email back that said, "Hey, would you be interested in a platinum plan that might be launching in the next month? And here's what all's included." And it is $20 a month, which I think that's probably, we're bearing the lead here. I think that's the biggest news. So Spotify is finally catching up with everybody else in terms of introducing lossless audio, uncompressed audio, but they're charging quite the premium. I think what Qobuz is, I think $15.99 a month. Is that right?
No, it's less than that. They knocked it down. I think it's $12.99 a month now.
$12.99 a month. And Apple recently went to, you told me they've raised their prices by $1, but it's like $10.99. And now Spotify is coming along and basically saying, well, we think people are going to pay $20 for this.
Yeah.
Now,
they have other stuff in there. They have other doodads, undefined doodads, some of which we can figure out what they are just from the name.
Right. So the first two doodads are hi-fi and studio sound. I don't know what the distinction between those would be. Then they're going to have a headphone tuner, which I think is potentially interesting, especially if they've actually measured a number of headphones the way, something like SonarWorks has. Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. They're not giving you any details, so we can only speculate.
Yeah, you use some kind of a plugin that does that because of an M?
Yes, from Tone Boosters. It's called Morphit. Yeah. And they have hundreds of headphones. And the interesting thing about that is you can,
that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, you can emulate the sound, well, as close as possible, emulate the frequency, response, and phase characteristics of any headphone with any other in their database. Is Spotify doing that? I don't know, but it's some sort of headphone tuner. Then they have something called Library Pro, Playlist Pro, and I have no idea what those might be. I have no idea.
Audio Insights.
Audio Insights.
Yeah.
But they already do audio insights. Like at the end of the year, they send you this thing, and here's what you listen to the most.
Oh, true. But here's my thought. Here's my thought. I think they're going to basically do the headphone tuner. I think studio sound is probably immersive on some level. Who knows if it's real Atmos or if it's just some fake algorithm they came up with. Headphone tuner is kind of obvious, but I think maybe Audio Insights, Library Pro, and Playlist Pro are Rune-like features.
Oh,
wouldn't that be something smart for them to do? And that's something that, I mean, people pay $10 a month for Rune right now, right?
Yeah. You were the first person to have any real insight into what those features might be, at least as far as I've heard. But that makes sense.
Well, I mean, I'm the Brent Butterworth.
That's true. That's true. Formerly Magazine's Brent Butterworth.
Yeah.
Now just the Internet's Brent Butterworth.
The Internet's Brent Butterworth.
I
still write for Jazz Times. They still print that thing. So.
Oh, okay. You're still Magazine's Brent Butterworth.
Yeah, I'm still Magazine a little bit.
We'll just move the apostrophe from the end of the S to before the S.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, that might be what it is. And then limited ad Spotify podcast. So I guess you can listen to their podcast with limited ad. I don't know. I've been listening to Björk's podcast on Spotify and I didn't notice any ads. So I don't know what limited ads would be. But anyway, do you think people are going to pay $20 for this, man?
It's tough to say. I think this is probably not as I kind of looked at this and thought like, oh, I'm just going to get rid of Spotify because I could, I just have Spotify because it's the biggest service. I'm a musician. I kind of need to know what's going on that service. I have a release out. Actually, I have kind of 2 releases out now. But, I should know what's going on with that service. So when I talk to my record company people, it's like, but however, I was sitting there thinking like, I have Qobuz, which I love, and I have Spotify, but I can get Apple for $10.99 now, and it basically has the maybe not as much high res content as Qobuz, but still lots of high res. It's got immersive, which I care about as a reviewer, maybe not as a not as a music lover. And it's cheaper. So it's kind of like it gives me everything I want. So I have to reassess which of these streaming services I really want to continue with.
I love the Spotify family plan, I have to say. And I really love being able to swap playlists back and forth with my daughter. You know, my daughter lives 1,000 miles away. You know, I don't get to see her very frequently, but we get to share music with one another really easily. That's awesome. But yeah, I think it's like, I don't know, man. There's the whole thing where, you know, a lot of times the reason they offer like a medium-sized drink that's such a bad value is because people look at it and go, well, screw it, I'm just going to get the large. Yeah. But in this case, it's like I'm looking at the large going, I don't want to eat here anymore. Like, this just seems like a bad value. I don't know.
But they'll still have the $9.99 plan. And as my friends on the Your Morning Coffee podcast pointed out, they were the ones that hipped me to the fact that Apple was raising their prices. And Amazon also is too. So the fact that those services are going up $1 and YouTube is as well. So it gives Spotify room to raise their regular tier from $9.99 to $10.99, and they've been at $9.99 for 10 years now.
Well, that's true.
They got room to raise it. They would be justified in raising it. Maybe they pay artists a smidgen more.
Probably not. They've got yacht payments to make.
Oh, they do. They probably devote X percent. Let's say they devote 10% of that price raise to paying more to artists, which wouldn't amount to much. Take-Two is still not up to its first penny in revenue for Spotify.
Wow. Wow.
I don't think so.
Are any of these things turning a profit? Do you know? There's so many of these things these days, these ubiquitous services that we think are making a gazillion dollars, and they're just bleeding money. Uber Eats makes no money. DoorDash makes no money. Like, they're just hemorrhaging money. So I'm wondering, does Spotify make money? Do they actually turn a profit?
I think they do. And because as the Your Morning Coffee guys were going into it, one of the reasons why they might do a price hike is that their earnings have been under pressure. So they're earning something, whether or not they're making a profit. There's all these sorts of financial accounting in here, which I can understand if I dig into it, but I don't know. And I'm not conversant with it. But their point was that, Spotify has spent so much money on podcasting, and they were transparent with shareholders. They said, look, we're spending a fortune on podcasting. We think that's going to eventually have higher margins than music does, which is not saying that much. But they said, look, we're going to be, we're spending so much on this and we're not going to see any return on it for a couple of years. So their earnings are down because of that. And so I'm going to guess they're probably making some money, but, they have to change and go with as the guys on Your Morning Coffee keep saying, and they're both like guys who are in the music industry for 30 years or so, they keep saying every week the music industry changes significantly. So, and then you have pressure from TikTok as well, which TikTok is in many ways eating all these guys' lunches.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. That's so weird. I just can't wrap my brain around that.
I can't either, because I get on TikTok and I'm just like, get me off here now.
I don't get on TikTok. I was raised better than that.
Well, I went to see in the last 6 months, I've been on TikTok to see a video I did for another publication that shall remain
really
named.
Good video. Yeah.
And a video that our friend Lauren Dragon did for Wirecutter. And so I went to see her video, which was about eardrum suck, the noise canceling headphone phenomenon. And immediately, like right after that, of course, her video is like a minute. It goes to some just idiot video, some woman doing some stupid thing in her living room or something. It's like, why would anybody want to watch this?
Hold on, man. You're starting to sound your age.
I am my age.
We better wrap this up.
Yeah, let's move on to our next segment, shall we? So Spotify, what's your prediction?
My prediction, I don't know. I mean, we don't have any confirmation of this. We have an email sent to one dude on Reddit. It could be the sort of thing. Yeah, one of the things is, a lot of times in politics, like people will leak stuff like this just to see what the reaction is.
Oh, sure.
And then they'll like change their policy as a result. This could be Spotify testing the waters. This could have been Spotify going, yeah, if we send this email to this dude, it'll end up on Tech Radar, and then we could see how outraged people are by, $20 for a headphone tuner. It could be that, the rumor was, and this was posted on sometime in the middle of October, a couple of weeks ago. The prediction was that it would be within the next 30 days. So as we're recording this, supposedly this is going to happen in the next 2 weeks. We will see. But if it drops at $19.99, I think I'm going to be calling my daughter and being like, "Hey, let's switch over to Amazon Music," because that's just a line too far for me.
Okay, I have my prediction. Number one, they go to $10.99 a month since everybody else did. Not everybody else, but Apple did, their biggest competitor. Well, no, YouTube's their biggest competitor, but YouTube's so unlike all the rest of these guys that it doesn't matter. Yeah. So they go to $10.99 a month for the regular service. No one's going to squawk about that. And they have this upgraded service, which has actually some features that seem like maybe they're kind of cool, but unlike, say, Apple, which just added immersive sound, they're adding a whole bunch of stuff that may have some real appeal to some people. And they may say like, oh yeah, that's really cool. I'd like that for $20 a month. I mean, maybe. So I think, and kudos to them for actually thinking their way through the problem instead of actually going like, yeah, we'll just put, CD quality sound or high res or something on there like everybody else, and we'll add immersive like everybody else. They're actually trying to do some stuff that will appeal to people. So I'm
interested in the headphone tuner. I want to see how good that is. So I'll at least check that out before I ditch them.
Yeah, although you can do SoundWorks. Is it SonarWorks? I keep getting
SonarWorks. Yeah,
SonarWorks, and you can just buy their app, right?
That's true.
Whatever, what is it, $50? I think it's $50, something like that. And it's a lot less than, that you'll be spending an extra 120 or 120 minus whatever, 10%. So my math is not good. A little over $100 a year extra, assuming they go to $10.99. So I don't know. We'll find out. Let's hear some music and then go to our third and final segment of the Soundstage Audiophile podcast.
Let's do it.
We're back. I am Brent Butterworth.
And I'm Dennis Berger.
And we are going to conclude this episode of the Soundstage Audiophile podcast with a discussion of Soundstage's coverage of the Audio Video Show 2022 in Warsaw, Poland. And this was, we had two correspondents there. We had Doug Schneider, who's our founder, and Jason Thorpe, who's our turntable reviewer and also reviews some other stuff for us and is really into high-end audio. And so they went over there and checked out the show and brought back a lot of reports of a lot of interesting products.
Yeah.
So I should talk a little bit.
Show, man.
I should talk about the show.
I've never been. Yeah, I want you to talk about it because it looks funky.
Yeah,
I mean that in a cool way. Yeah,
I went 3 or 4 years ago, and it was really shocking because you don't really think of Warsaw as a hotbed of anything in particular. Or at least we Americans don't. However, I went to this audio show about 4 years ago, I think, and I was really shocked at how vital and exciting and well-attended a show it was. It basically took over, the better part of 2 hotels in Warsaw, as well as they have rooms in like the box seats of the stadium, the sort of sort of big, it's like big meeting rooms and stuff. And then they also have part of the stadium. It's the big soccer stadium that's right outside the middle of Warsaw. And then they also have some big sort of convention type areas down there as well, where they have the headphones and things like that. So it's a big show, and it's really well attended.
Doug did a post about that, by the way. He did a post about sort of the 3 different zones of the show.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty cool.
And
kind of made you feel like you're there.
It's shocking in so many ways, in that it's the second biggest audio show in Europe behind the Munich show. And this is, by the way, this is Warsaw in, end of October. This is not exactly a resort setting, although Warsaw is a delightful town and it's very easy to get around, and the food's good. So anyway, there's a lot of, high-end audio tilting more towards European brands, some of which are active here in the US and some of which are not. But you'll see, the big names like Sonus Faber and Audio Research, and the sort of the classic B&W, the sort of classic names. But then you'll also see a lot of companies that you've never heard of, because I was shocked to learn that Poland has a really thriving high-end audio industry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of the manufacturers at this show are unfamiliar, and the Poland hi-fi industry ranges from stuff that's almost like Harman, it's like super well engineered, super by the book, scientific, to some just crazy far out there stuff. There's a really wide range there, and I just got a huge kick out of that. So what was your favorite product out of the coverage that was on here?
Well, Jason did this post called "The Bargain of the Show So Far." That shocked me. I opened up this post curious to see what it was, and the first picture I see is of this gorgeous tube amplifier with this amazingly engineered basket, and it's just the fit and finish of this amp is just, it's a work of art. And so, without reading the words, I'm looking at it thinking, oh, this is going to be one of those things, right? At $30,000, it's a bargain. It's an amp by a company called Fez Audio. It's called the Titania. And it turns out that it costs, what did Jason say here? 11,000 Polish zlotys, which translates into $2,300 US. This thing is incredible looking. So I went to look at their website, the Fez Audio website. This thing is incredibly customizable. You can add things like Bluetooth. You can add a subwoofer pre-out. You can add I went and configured the thing like I would want it in a custom color, by the way. Well, not custom. They've got a range of colors you can pick from Big Calm, which is kind of a plum color, and there's this burning red, which is amazing. By the way, note to Fez Audio, make this thing in Corvette racing yellow tent coat. I will buy it. But all of the add-ons that I did brought it up to 12,960 zlotys, and that is
it's not zlotys. Zlotys is kind of like the sandwich shop.
Oh, that's the sandwich, right?
There's no ski at the end, just zloty.
I'm sorry, man.
You've never been to Poland. I've been to Poland. Yeah. I'm deep into the culture there.
Yeah. So customize this thing as much as you want, and it comes out to $2,700 US. And I'm looking at it going, do I need this? I think I might need this. It's just it is a work of art. You look at this amp and you're like, well, there's no way I could afford the $25,000 that thing costs. But no, it's more like $2,500. Yeah. Is that kind of typical of the scene there, or is this an outlier?
It's kind of a little all over the map. I would say the prices on the stuff that's made in Poland are probably a little less than what you'd find on, from a Focal or somebody like that, from some of the sort of the real classic European brands, but they're not like crazy. There were a couple, when Doug and I were there 4 or 5 years ago, there were a couple of really pretty crazy bargains that we found. Really nice stuff that was maybe 25% less than you would pay for a sort of classic hi-fi brand. And
nice.
I really I have to point out that on this amp, a lot of times you think like, okay, it's made in a country that's not a country that we're used to buying audio gear from. You think the design's going to be tacky. I usually do. But no, this thing looks nicer than it's a really cool like matte black finish on it. It looks
Go to the site and put it in evergreen. Like go to the evergreen color selection, and it's holy crap. That is amazing.
Yeah, it's just, it's like one of the nicest designed tube amps I've ever seen.
Yeah. You would want this out in the room, no matter the room.
Yeah.
You want this thing like displayed with a light pointing at it,
Yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
It's really cool.
What stood out to you about the show? Is there any product you wish you could have heard?
Well, not surprisingly, it's a speaker. And it's one that Doug Schneider, our founder, wrote about with the, click-getting headline, Silent Pound's Challenger speaker is something special or shite. So, all right. Kudos to Doug. Good headline.
Yeah.
So, so he goes into a pretty deep dive on this speaker, and they're 10,000 euros a pair, which is like about $100. No, it's about 1-to-1. It's about 1-to-1.
Yeah, it's about 1-to-1 right now.
So, and it's still a prototype, but it is one of the most unusual speaker designs, and it looks really cool. And I just don't know. They clearly know what they're doing. They clearly have an idea here, and I don't know if it sounds good, but I really am dying to hear it because, okay, so what they do on the bottom, the woofers are open baffle, right? They're open. The back of it's open and the front of it's open. So that kind of gets you away from some of the boxy resonant sound that bass has. Now, of course, your bass, the efficiency of the design goes way down when you do that. You get a lot more bass if you have a cabinet on there. But, if you throw in enough amp at it, it'll be fine. And it looks like they have some moderately efficient drivers on here. That's not these giant subwoofer drivers that have the big giant surrounds on them that take a colossal amount of power. So that's probably fine. But then you get up into the mid-range and the tweeter. The tweeter is a 1-inch compression driver. Nothing, it's like a little horn sort of. But
it's a waveguide very similar to what we've seen from Paradigm's new stuff. Yeah. Like a very, very deep waveguide. Yeah,
it's a deep waveguide. It's quasi-horn-ish. So, but the mid-ranges, it's got a couple, I think, 6-inch mid-ranges or somewhere thereabouts. And so the mid-ranges are flanking the tweeter in what's called often referred to as a Diapolito arrangement with, vertically you go from a woofer to a tweeter to a woofer, and which is pretty common. But the weird thing about it is, though, there's a bunch of little vents. It looks like about probably 60 vents on either side of the mid-range tweeter mid-range array. And the back there is a back on that cabinet, and of course the tweeter itself is sealed, but there's a back on the mid-range cabinet, but they vent out the front. So they're venting out of phase. So the wave that's coming through those front vents is out of phase, more or less. I mean, I'm sure it depends on frequency and everything, but it's more or less out of phase with the mid-range drivers. And so that kind of creates a lobe, right? So it kind of makes the speaker super directional horizontally. So and Doug actually asked if, what the vertical dispersion's like, and the guy said, oh, the vertical dispersion's great, and we engineered for that, and blah, blah, blah. But this is actually designed to create like a narrow beam horizontally in the mid-range, which is not normally what you would do with a speaker. Normally, you want to make the speaker have as broad a dispersion as possible, right? I mean, that's all, verified in the research that was done at the Canadian National Research Council and then at Harman. But this is flying in the face of that.
Do you think it would perform more in terms of dispersion, more like an electrostat, maybe?
Yeah, that's a good point. It might.
Okay.
Because electrostatic speakers are, well, they're not, the ones that are like really the completely flat panels, as opposed to any panel speaker, a magnetoplanar like a Magnepan or something. The ones that have the really flat panels have pretty narrow dispersion. Especially, vertically, they have very narrow dispersion because they're so tall. And horizontally, they have fairly narrow dispersion because, the panel is 1.5 feet or 2 feet or whatever wide. And, of course, the wider the radiating surface, the narrower, the more the dispersion narrows at high frequencies. So I don't know. Maybe they're going after a panel speaker kind of sound, but we should say here, Doug's conclusion was, but what I am quite sure of after researching even more about the Challenger online is that it's not shite or close to that. In fact, it was my favorite product of Audio Video Show 2022.
Yeah.
So that says something. Doug's heard some
Those are
speakers
big words,
before.
man. Yeah. And this is a show he really digs. So, yeah, it's really cool.
So I'm kind of curious to hear that. I'd never heard of the company before. I don't think Doug had heard of the company before.
Yeah, I've never heard of the company before.
So, and it's a weird company named Silent Pound.
Yeah.
So I think Doug's initial statement, it's either something special or shite. That's kind of the way I would have reacted if I saw that. I'd be like, what the hell are they doing? And I'd have to go sit and listen.
That's kind of the way you react to mashed potatoes, though, you know?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm curious about that. I wish I could have gone to the show. I hope to go to it again someday.
Yeah.
Some year, because it's a really cool show. It's really, really fun. And it's kind of a little bit of a, from a press standpoint, if you're in the press, it's kind of a little bit more of a small crew. There's a lot of really enthusiastic high-end audio press there, but it's not like the kind of gazillion people that you see at Munich or at Axpona or something like that. It's more of a small crew, and you kind of interact with them more, and that's really fun.
Very cool.
So
I think we're in danger of overstaying our welcome here this week, Brent. We've talked a lot.
Let's cut it off. Credits.
Let's cut it off, man. You want to do some credits?
Yeah. Can I start?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's start with the music, which is done by my friend Terry Landry, and completely composed and performed by him. And these are actually demos that he's doing for a project that he has in the works. Which is a sort of audiophile quality tiki jazz album that he's planning. But you have worked on these a little bit, right?
Yeah, I've been playing around with them. This will be, I think, the first episode where people actually hear any of the work that I do. I've been just using them to sort of test my mastering skills, and I've done a couple of remasters on these things. And one of the interesting things I've found is I was just playing around with some of the tape emulators that I've found in terms of plugins. One of them, I took the demo that Terry did all in MIDI, and I just, reasonably to be expected, it was kind of a flat mix, and I ran it through.
Because these are demos that he's just putting together as proof of concept to share with other musicians, so he can get them to play on the record.
Right. I ran it through
It's supposed to be something that's playing on a podcast.
Right, exactly. I took and ran it through a tape bus emulator and brought the level of the tape noise up until it was audible, and then just brought it down like a couple of decibels. And the interesting thing about it is all of a sudden it had more depth. There was depth to the soundstage. So I'm learning some really, really interesting things about tape emulators playing around with Terry's music. So
cool. Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, who mixed this thing?
Well, Butterburger Productions is the name we're using now. So one of us did it. Okay. I don't think either of us is going to take credit for it.
No.
We should say, though, that we are a presentation of the Soundstage Network, which is, as we said in the intro, a collection of 9 microsites covering all sorts of topics in audio. Intro music and outro music by you, Mr. Brent Butterworth. Indeed. And who played with you on those tracks?
I think nobody.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think just me, unless you can hear my dog in the background running around.
Maybe you can. All right, man. Well, should we give a little teaser and say we're going to have a special guest next episode?
We're going to have a special guest next episode.
Is that all we're going to say?
I said it.
All right. We'll see you then.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.